So the first thing I want to talk about with getting a sprint started is a concept called a sprint zero. And in a sprint zero, it should be about the normal length of a sprint. You don't want to take all the time in the world trying to get started. You want to get started as fast as you can. But there are often a lot of things you have to do in order to get started. You should come up with your product vision. You should also have your initial product backlog. And that backlog only needs to really be about 2 sprints worth of well-groomed stories that have been prioritized, sufficient level of detail, and estimated by the team. And the reason you need 2 sprints is you need enough for obviously the first sprint, and you want to have some ready to play in case you actually get more done than you expect, and you can pull ones in. And once you have that initial product backlog, you can also then make an initial release plan. Now, even though you're going to make this plan, it's going to be wrong because you won't have any empirical evidence with this current team or this product backlog yet. But it's important to have something to kind of start looking at. So you create that plan, but understand it's dynamic and living. You can also come up with your architecture approach and coding practices. Now, I did not say come up with an architecture, and I do not mean building all your plumbing and your frameworks. You still want to normally let a product evolve and use what we call emergent design. But you do want to get your general ideas of what architecture patterns you're going to use and your constraints technically for the company you're with, the coding practices so you can make sure that the code that is being produced is in line with what your rules are. You also want to set up a continuous integration environment. This is the environment where you can check in code, have it automatically built, it can run the tests for it, it can deploy to another environment. As much of that as you can get set up because we want to be able to deploy whatever we've done as quickly as possible. And while the first sprint may not produce something you could actually go to market with, it should be potentially shippable. And to do that, you'll need to have a continuous integration environment set up. And then if you can, some small product increments, something small that you can get all the way through the process so that you can at least have something to show for it as far as the actual product. How much value it can provide to the end customer, that'll vary. Obviously, it may not be something big, but something small to prove your architecture designs, your continuous integration environment, all the way through. I also want to point out, there's my purple asterisk, that this is not something that is recommended from the Scrum.org Scrum Guide. You'll also, if you go and look it up on the internet, find many people talking one way or another. Some people call this an anti-pattern, that if you spend all this time doing all your planning and things and design, you're doing big design up front and you're right back to waterfall. I can see that as an anti-pattern if you did that. That's why I recommend a sprint zero. Only use it if you need it. And if you do implement one, make it no longer than a normal sprint because that way you can't sit around and plan indefinitely until you think you're ready because you're never going to be ready. Get enough to start that first sprint and move forward.